when I wake up in the morning, the first thing I do, to my wife's horror, I grab my phone. I just want to know what's happened while I've been asleep. I can't wait. I want to see it. I want to talk about it. I want to tweet about it.
So you love my meltdowns on court then?
Of course.
Okay, so
But I had to pretend to hate them because I had to play up your villainous image, which, by the way, made you a lot of money. So the words you're looking for are, thank you, Piers.
Thank you, Piers. Welcome to Hana Kuma's Good Trouble, where we celebrate those who have the courage to disrupt the norm. I'm Nick Kyrgios, professional tennis player and your host. In each episode, we'll sit down with game changers who aren't afraid to rock the boat. We'll dig into their stories and the waves they've made in their worlds for the better. Welcome to my show, Good Trouble with Nick Kyrgios. Joining me today is a man who really needs no introduction. From his early days at the helm of British tabloids to his explosive presence on TV screens around the globe. The king of controversy, the master of media mayhem, and the guy who's never afraid to speak his mind. A man whose career is as colourful as it is controversial. Piers Morgan. So, Piers.
Oh, wait a minute. Can we just have a moment to appreciate that intro?
It was a good intro. It was a great intro. More controversy than me.
Being called controversial by you is really quite
that's saying a lot. That's saying a lot.
Yeah.
But, Piers, tell me, what does good trouble mean to you?
People say to me, are you staying out of trouble? Often. And I always reply, no, I'm trying to stay in trouble because I like being at the centre of controversy. I like being at the centre of debate. I like putting my head over the parapet, saying what I think and being challenged about it and challenging other people when they say things I don't agree with. That, to me, is what a proper democracy is all about.
Yep.
It's what a thriving, free country should be. You and I should go toe-to-toe and then go and have a pint of a dog and fox in Wimbledon.
I think you like trouble a little bit too much. That was the most...
Oh, coming from you!
That was the most passionate answer any guest has given about how much you like trouble. Paint us a picture of what it was like for you growing up. You know, I want to get a sense of like young Piers. How was it?
I grew up in a country pub in the south of England, in East Sussex, a little village, only about 1,000 people. My parents ran a pub. So that was my upbringing. I started bottling up, which probably explains why I would go to school stinking of beer at age 6. Wasn't because I had an early drink problem. But it was great because the thing about a country pub in England, you know, you love our pubs.
I do.
Is that when you go to especially in the villages, they become this kind of meritocracy. Everyone comes in, from the squire and the duke to the local carpenter, the local bricklayer and so on. And everyone in there is the same. In that moment, they're all having a pint of foaming ale or whatever it may be, and they're all talking crap. And it's basically, that's pub life. And I grew up like that. So I think that's why I've been able, throughout my journalism career, to interview the biggest stars or politicians in the world, from American presidents to Nelson Mandela to the Dalai Lama, to then hanging out with all my village mates or meeting, cab drivers and having a perfectly similar conversation with them as I would to the Queen. And I think it all comes back to being in the pub when I was a kid. So we did that till I was about 13. I had private education for the first half of my education, then state. So I experienced both. And what I found was the common theme, good teachers. I can remember good teachers at both. I can remember a lot of bad teachers at both. And I think ultimately a good education comes down to one or two great teachers in your life who can actually act as some kind of mentor and inspirer to you. So I found those people, and they really drove me. And they drove me mainly to work out what I wanted to be in life. And from an early age, probably like you with tennis, I wanted to be a journalist. My mum remembers me reading the Daily Mail, which might explain a lot of things. Your favourite paper. I remembers me reading the Daily Mail when I was about 7 or 8 and reading the headlines and being enthralled by news. And that's never left me. I still read 5 papers every day. The moment I get up, there they are on my doorstep. I devour them, and I love news. I love being the first with information. I love sharing that information.
Whether it's not true or not, like making a villain out of me for years.
Well, you were a villain.
I'm actually a great guy.
You were a villain for years, and there's no actual discernible evidence you stopped being a villain. I'm not buying this cheesy new brand you're trying to promote for yourself with your cozy little podcast.
That's so funny.
No, I know. I think that I found a passion in my life, and it was journalism. You found yours with tennis. And I say to my kids, I've got 4 kids from 31 to 12, and I say to all of them, I don't mind what you do or how much money you earn or any of those things. I only care about one thing. Find something that when you wake up in the morning, you can't wait to get to do it. Then it's a passion, not a job. Then it's something you look forward to, you can embrace. It might be challenging, it might be hard work, but it'll never feel like a job. That's the key, I think, to fulfillment in life.
Well, I was going to ask you because I was actually really excited. Like, how does a young boy find the passion to be a journalist? And the way you just spoke, I was like, you've been loving this from day one.
And still do. When I wake up in the morning, the first thing I do, to my wife's horror, I grab my phone. I just want to know what's happened while I've been asleep. That's what I get excited by. I can't wait. I want to see it. I want to talk about it. I want to tweet about it.
So you love my meltdowns on court then?
Of course.
Okay.
But I had to pretend to hate them because I had to play up your villainous image, which, by the way, made you a lot of money. So the words you're looking for are, thank you, Piers.
Thank you, Piers. So this unfiltered approach and always being yourself, have you always been like that? Because for me, people think that I try and be this way I'm on court, playing with the crowd, talking to the crowd, bouncing my racket, being emotional. Since I was 10, my mum, I used to cry on the courts. I used to be throwing tantrums and I kind of pulled it together, but I've always been super emotional, play with my emotions on my sleeve, not accepting losing at all. Have you always been this way from a young age?
Hated losing. I mean, even at Tiddlywinks. I've got 2 brothers and we would literally physically fight over Tiddlywinks, chess. Cricket, football, whatever it was. All loved our sport, all wanted to win at all costs. And I've always had that throughout my entire life. I don't see the point in life if you're not going to be competitive. You don't want to be the best at what you do or want the best from people around you to maximize their potential. That to me is what life's about. Too many people are happy to sit back and just not maximize their potential or not even try and find something that may be their potential. They give up. They do. Too easily. And I think that there are 2 types of people in life. They're the ones who just really want to constantly improve themselves and find what they're great at and enjoy it. And there are lots of people who just, for whatever reason, they can't be bothered or they give up and they don't have that thing inside them. And they end up doing a job they hate, a life they really don't like, and they end up, 65, keeling over. And you think, well, what was the point of that? Yeah. What impact have you made on anything or anyone with that life? I don't think you and I, when we keel over, are going to have quite that problem. We'll have made an impact, good, bad, and ugly.
That's true. And you've worked with some amazing people. I think for me, I'm probably at the bottom of the list of some of the celebrities and people that you've sat down with. And
you're like C+.
Oh, C+, thanks. Just above average. What influence, have you ever had a moment where you've just been wow, I've had an amazing experience, and has there ever been a time where you just have to kind of pinch yourself saying, look at all these amazing people I can talk to and get the news out there and any of that sort of stuff?
I mean, look, I've interviewed 5 American presidents. I've interviewed 10 British prime ministers. Like I said, Nelson Mandela, the Dalai Lama, all these amazing people. Major celebrities from, Oprah Winfrey to movie stars.
To Nick Kyrgios.
To Nick Kyrgios. A lot of sportsmen, actually.
Yep.
But if you ask me, the one interview I did, as it was happening, even my jaw was dropping. I was thinking, I know I've got a monumental scoop here that nobody else knows. It was Cristiano Ronaldo when he left Manchester United, and it was my interview that caused him to leave. Oh. And only me and him knew he was doing it. He didn't tell any of his team.
Wow.
It was just me and Cristiano and his girlfriend and his couple of his bodyguards who'd been with him a long time, and my little crew. And we were in his house in Manchester doing an interview that, as it went on, I realised was going to be the biggest sports story in the world for about 3 weeks.
Wow.
Which is what happened. That is an adrenaline rush like nothing else.
Yeah, of course, because you can't tell anyone.
And I got to know him very well, Cristiano. And he's the kind of guy that, when I talked earlier about sort of finding a passion, you've also got to marry it with a work ethic. That guy has a work ethic. Yep. If you could sit with him like I've done a few times and talk about his attitude to work and stuff, your eyes would be popping.
100%.
And that's one of the reasons he said to me, him and Messi, the 2 greatest footballers I've ever seen. And he said the reason we're at the top of our game for 20 years is that we took care of ourselves on a daily,
100%.
hourly basis.
Consistencies.
And that was it. They very rarely got injuries. And then he talked about other great footballers who were brilliant, but only for 4 or 5 years. Because they like to party, didn't take care of their bodies. And football's littered with players like that. Those 2 are exceptional because of the longevity. Michael Phelps, I remember interviewing when he was going for 21 gold medals at the Olympics. He already won 18. Had 3 more London Olympics. And I said, what makes you different to the others, and to the other swimmers, or even your other teammates on the American Olympic team? And he said, why don't you go back and interview everyone, and then interview all my rivals and ask them, have you ever gone 5 years consecutive
and not miss
without a single day off training?
That's it, yeah.
5 consecutive years.
Yeah, that's nuts.
365 days a year. And he said it would be like 6 to 7 hours, half in the pool, half out.
Not missing a day.
Missing birthdays, christenings, weddings.
That's ridiculous.
Wedding anniversaries, mum's birthday, girlfriend, everything. He said, that's the sacrifice. And I said, why did you do that? what drove you? He went, look, I wanted to be the best of all time. And when I stood there, ready to dive in, I'd look left and I'd look right, and they knew and I knew that I'd done 52 more days training each year in a 4-year Olympic cycle. That is 208
that's
days.
not even comparable.
So he's doing 2/3 more of a year training than they're doing for that Olympics. It's over before he hits the water. So obviously he had other physical attributes, but it's the mental side of things.
The edge, getting the edge.
And I think that's when I've interviewed the sportsmen, the greatest of all time, whether it's people like Ronaldo, whether it's people like Michael Phelps, they all have that thing in them. And it comes from inside. It's a thing you can't really teach people. They just have that burning obsession to be the greatest.
So this is a bit more of a question that I wanted to ask, because public perception on things, like there was a time where people thought that me and Novak hated each other, where we're actually good friends now. And me and Tsitsipas used to be very good friends, and now the media have kind of turned it on us. Is there anyone that you are actually decently friends with that the public perception is that you don't like each other?
Probably Gary Lineker would be a good one. People think because of our Twitter spats that we hate each other, but we often go out for dinner and laugh, and sometimes we're tweeting each other over the same dinner table just to see what happens.
Oh, you just give it too much power.
He'd be a good example. And Gary's someone that I like because he was brilliant at what he did, one of the great footballers. He's a very good commentator too, and very good pundit and presenter. But he's also someone that you can just take the piss out of, and he'll laugh. I like people like that. People can't laugh at themselves. I agree. I don't want to hang out with them.
I agree.
But I always think the saving grace for anyone, and you've got it, and I hope I've got it, is that you can just, I don't mind if people take the piss out of me.
You've definitely got it.
Yeah.
So the responsibility you have, you've got fans and viewers worldwide, millions and millions of people. What responsibility do you hold to yourself every time you come into work or every time you do a segment? Like, what do you like uphold to yourself?
The 7 Ps. So my brother was a British Army colonel, and their unofficial regimental motto was the 7 Ps. Prior planning and preparation prevent piss poor performance. And it's really valuable, right? I don't go into anything unprepared. When I'm interviewing you, I'm all over the detail of what you've been up to, I
can feel it.
I've read interviews, I've watched interviews and so on. I do that with everybody. I think it's the least I can do as an interview is show a courtesy to every guest to be prepared. That kind of attention to preparation, which I think probably is the same for every sportsman, right? And if you want to actually win, you've got to put the hours in preparation. It's the same for journalists, same for interviewers. You've got to put the hours in and you've got to be ready. So that to me is my mantra.
Have you always been like this, even from a young Piers?
Yeah, I would say that I was quite annoying as a kid. I used to get thrown out of my local pub for being too opinionated. You'd be unsurprised to hear.
Oh, yeah.
And Mary, the landlord, would eventually let me back in, but it took a lot of grovelling. And then the next Saturday, same thing, on repeat, 10 pints, and off I go about my views on life. Out you go, and that would be it. So it was always there. I come from a highly opinionated family. I'm probably the least opinionated person in my family.
Well, I'm the least craziest, by the way.
Exactly. We are the most misunderstood members of our own family. But I do think that's the pre-game, if you like, for me. But also when I get on air, I'm always conscious now we've got this huge global audience. So some of the interviews and debates are getting 10, 20 million people watching all over the world, from Australia to New York, to the Middle East, to India. And what I want to do now is, with this uncensored umbrella that I have for the show, is give everybody a platform and challenge everybody. I don't come at it from a partisan point of view, left or right, or this party or that
just
party,
honesty. This
tribe, that tribe. It's just, this is what I think of this. And it can be variable. Sometimes I'll go against what people think, but I go with my gut feeling about what I feel about things. And I give everyone a platform. So I don't believe in censorship or deplatforming people, or only having one narrow world view that everybody has to sign up to.
So obviously, as a young Piers coming through and achieving what you're achieving, being the youngest editor of the British, national newspaper, and then obviously with social media today, because I struggle. Like I'm 29, 30, but when I was like 12, I had a flip phone, and now it's gone to the point where Instagram, X, everything's going crazy. For you, how's that transition been like? Because it couldn't have been always easy. Like, you seem that you've prepared and you have uncensored, but surely at some stage you were like, this is mayhem. Like, how do I adapt through what's going on?
Yeah, some things blow up massively and you're trending worldwide, and it's not necessarily for the right reasons, and you've got to navigate that. I always look at it and say, right, if you're in trouble, my honest advice to everybody is get out of it as fast as you possibly can. There's no point digging a bigger hole for yourself. So if you genuinely have made a bad mistake, if you've said something you shouldn't have said, tweeted something you shouldn't have tweeted, whatever it may be, behaved badly on a court when you shouldn't have done, smashed a racket, the best thing actually, and the most disarming thing for your critics is to go, I'm sorry. Right? Yeah. In the moment, I lost my head. I made a mistake. There's no way back for your critics when you do that. They can try, but true. Actually far better for the critics is if you refuse to do that.
Yeah, you got to be vulnerable.
If you dig in and you say, no, I was absolutely justified in smashing that racket over the ball boy's head.
I've tried that, trust me.
It doesn't work.
It doesn't work.
It doesn't work because people like me will soon get you on Twitter.
Well, has there ever been a moment where you've been in extreme hot water? Like an example of me, like obviously I've had 10 to 15 moments where, you know, I told a player that one of my mates slept with his girlfriend. Like, I've had moments where I've like, oh my God. And I woke up in Times Square and it's like rotating around. Like, have you ever had specific bad moments where like things got dicey for you with your journal, like with your style?
Big time. When I got fired from the Daily Mirror over pictures of British troops abusing Iraqi civilians in the Iraq War. You know, and it was complicated by the fact my own brother was fighting in Iraq. So imagine for my family, you've got me leading the news for apparently denigrating British Army soldiers for abuse. As it turned out, they had been doing the abuse. The pictures we showed to illustrate it have never really been established to be either fake to my estimation or real, but they were enough at the time for the government to say they're fake and everything else for me to be fired and to be walking around the streets of people shouting and you know, good, bad, it was hot. And so I know what that feeling's like, you know, when you're leading the news. Yep. And it can be brutal. And I've been on the receiving end of that, I would say 4 or 5 times in my career. I got, you know, bounced out of the morning show, Good Morning Britain, for saying I didn't believe what Meghan Markle and Prince Harry told Oprah Winfrey. Yep. I still don't. But I got told either I apologise for disbelieving them or I had to leave. So I left. But what I found then was I was incredibly like the centre of the firestorm on the first day. Within 48 hours, everyone had come around to agreeing with me because more and more of the stories unravelled. And at that point, I saw the mood change. And you probably had this yourself when in the moment it can be horrible,
it's hot.
Toxic, hot. You're getting bombarded left, right and centre. And the key thing is to stay calm and to trust yourself. And if you're right, to just double down like I did, and I've seen you do sometimes when you know you're right. Yeah. And actually you'll see the public, they'll admire that, and they'll come round to what they believe to be authenticity and honesty. I always think the most powerful weapon you have as a human being in a public eye, authenticity. Yep. The people that I like, and you're one of them, are people that when you meet them, they're exactly how they are. There's no other side to it.
It's not like
you're no different when you're competing or here. You're a little calmer, but your actual persona, you're no different.
Yeah.
Right, and I'm the same. I'm no different behind the camera as I am on camera. I'm the same person. You may not like me, but this is me.
Yeah, and they can respect that.
Yeah, and I think people can have a respect for you without it necessarily liking you. I don't care if they like me or not.
So this is more of a curiosity question. So when you're like, say, walking down the street, like, what is it? Because for me, sometimes in Australia, it's hectic, or like wherever. Honestly, through the village, it's actually crazy. But for you, do people come up? Like, what's it like for you?
Yeah, I get a lot of people come up. I've got to say, in 10 years, and having had a lot of firestorms, I can count on one hand the number of people who said anything bad. Literally one hand. Yep. And what normally happens is they'll say it when they think I'm out of earshot.
And then they're just like walking away.
And I often go over and have an hour.
What was that, mate?
Yeah, what did you say? And then they always back down and start apologising. Yeah. Most people, as you, I'm sure, experience, are incredibly nice. So they're just funny. They'll say things. They see me as a bit of that I can take a joke and have a bit of fun with it. And I like that. But I think it's, look, if you're in the public eye, to me, you don't have to be. I don't have to be on camera. I don't have to be on television. But if you're going to be entering people's homes.
It's true.
And you've got to have that awareness about yourself and understand that you're only there because of them. So I never turn down an autograph request. I never turn down a selfie request, even if sometimes it's the last thing you want to do.
Yep.
I never turn them down because I can remember when I was a kid,
it would be
collecting cricketers' autographs. And I remember the people who turned me down when I was 10.
So you never forgot?
Never forget.
So you're petty.
No, but it's not that. It's more like when you're young, you never forget. And I don't want to ever have a young person come up to me and say, I watched your interview with Nick Kyrgios. Can I have a selfie?
Yeah.
And then I say, actually, I haven't got time. And they go away for the rest of their lives. Yeah. They'll look at me and think, That guy couldn't even be bothered to give me a second of his time.
Yeah, I do. I have an exception for kids and elderly. Like even if it's at a dinner or something, I try to do it. But if it's like a grown adult in not place right time, I say like maybe not now. Because like I'm not always on duty. Like sometimes if I'm out to dinner with my partner and a normal guy like my age just butts in and it's a bit disrespectful, like I think that I'm actually doing him a favour because it's not. I wouldn't want my like.
Yeah, I would always do it.
That's
because I'm a better person. You know the most fun reaction.
That's funny.
Most fun reaction I ever had was when I faced Brett Lee in a cricket net at the Melbourne Test match, and 10,000 people came out to watch it, and Channel 9 put it on air live. Sky did it here live. And he tried to kill me for 6 balls.
Yeah, well, he can.
He broke my rib.
Did he break your rib?
He broke my rib and then hit the broken rib with the next ball.
Oh, my God.
And he came down and we had headsets. He went, "Oh, mate, did you hear that one crack?" That's when I realised I was dealing with a psychopath. No offence, Brett. But I managed to survive. The thing was I wanted to survive 6 balls, which I did. But I was battered and bruised, everything else. But afterwards, I went back in the stadium and all the Brits were like, "You wanker." And all the Aussies stood up and gave me a standing ovation.
We are respectful.
And went, "Finally, a bloody pom with some guts around here."
I wouldn't
Mitchell Johnson had been terrorising us. We were 3-0 down in the Ashes. And from that day, every time I meet an Aussie, they always bring up the Brett Lee thing and they always go, fair play, mate.
Yeah, that's dangerous, though.
It was. But it was, once I knew I was alive, it was a great story.
So speaking of trouble, we've actually got some footage I want to show you of you dancing at the Taylor Swift concert. No, I'm joking. We don't. I just wanted to see your reaction.
That was a horrifying moment.
I was like, I think we got some footage here. No, but you recently attended a show with your daughter and received a bracelet. No, what was the bracelet?
Yeah, it said everyone else got a friendship bracelet, and they were all saying things like "love you," whatever. Mine just said by totally random chance. They were just handing them out.
Random, yeah.
Mine just said, "Why are you so mean?"
Yeah, you got what you deserve.
Which is the lyrics of one of her songs, apparently.
Yeah, that's funny. But we actually do have some footage, by the way.
You do?
But I'm not gonna. So since I'm here for Wimbledon, and you know, for me, Wimbledon's been such a big part of my life, literally for the last 12 years. I played juniors here, and throughout my career, it's always been a huge moment. You of all people would know, what's for the UK culture? Like how important is Wimbledon?
I trained on the Wimbledon newspaper. So I covered the Wimbledon tennis. In fact, one of the first scoops I ever had was I infiltrated security at Wimbledon tennis. I got into the royal box. I got into the players' dressing room. I was 19 and I got banned for life by the All England Club.
You're joking.
The chairman, Buzzer Haddingham, his name was, wrote to the newspaper's editor and said that I would never be allowed to cross the hallowed turf again.
So you can't come into Wimbledon?
Well, they haven't kept it up. I've been back.
Oh, okay. Well,
I've been back. But I was actually given a lifetime ban for exposing genuine security issues. I managed to be literally having a gin and tonic in the royal box, right, on a match day during the tournament. I got into the players' dressing room, was talking to players. I was a reporter for the Wimbledon News.
That's nuts.
It was nuts, yeah. It wouldn't happen now. But at the time, it was exhilarating. And it showed me what I really love is scoops.
So that was one of your first gigs?
It was one of my first big scoops.
That's awesome.
It was Wimbledon tennis, yeah. But what Wimbledon means to people, I think you've touched on this in interviews with me, that it's for everyone, whether you love tennis or not, everyone's aware of Wimbledon and what it means, and the clotted cream and the scones and the Pims and the bands and the royal family coming in and Cliff Richard singing his songs and so on. There's a certain magic about Wimbledon which no other tournament has. And I think that's what makes it a special thing, not just for the players, but for the people, the British people, and for tourists.
So on the topic of Wimbledon, like obviously that year when I made it to the finals, I was very aware of some of the things that were being said, and you were like, I don't know if it was you specifically, but the UK press was, this is the worst thing to happen for Wimbledon. If I had won that year, what do you think some of the articles would have been? Like, what would you have said on Uncensored?
Honestly, they'd have all turned on a dime. I
don't think so.
Yeah, they would have done.
You think so?
Yes, because you would have turned it around. If you actually had won, all that angst and fury and passion that was whirling inside you because you were so desperate to win, in that moment of victory, you'd have become this guy.
Maybe I would have been like, say something now, Piers Morgan.
If you'd literally stared down the barrel of the camera and called us all a bunch of graceless dicks, you would have got the attention you deserve. I suspect in that moment of victory, a lot of that, that angst would have gone, and you'd have been Mr. Charming Nick, and you'd have charmed everybody, and everyone would have cheered you.
So McEnroe went on record and said that Andy Murray deserves a statue outside Wimbledon. Do you agree with that?
I do.
I think he should.
I think he's one of the greatest sportsmen. And I think he also epitomises what I like my sportsman to be, which is that he has this kind of persona that he plays up to, which bears no relation to what he's actually like.
Yeah, I know.
In real life, he's highly intelligent, very funny guy.
He's funny.
Loves a prank, loves a laugh, but he loves playing up to this kind of persona that he has. But as a player, wow.
Yeah.
I mean, one of the greatest sportsmen England's ever produced of any sport. So I've got a lot of time for Andy, and he's a great guy.
So as someone with a significant platform, and I don't know how long you're planning to do what you do. Like for me, I know that my tennis career is probably on the end at stages, and that's just what athletes, we come to an end at some stage. But I guess you can keep doing this for as long as you kind of want. So what's your responsibility on like future or upcoming journalists? Like, do you uphold kind of thing? Like, do you have people coming in and asking you for advice? Like, what do you...
all the time, and I try and find time for them. Especially if they're like me, I used to write to people all the time asking for advice. And I remember the people who wrote back to me, or at least gave me something, You've got to give people a little morsel. If you've been lucky enough, as we have, to have reached the top of our professions, you owe it to the young people trying to get on that first rung to at least give them some of your time. It doesn't take long, and they'll never forget it. And I always say to people, by the way, you never know where they're going to end up. They might end up your boss.
That's true.
So you may as well get them at the first rung, because when they're at the top of the ladder, if you treated them badly, you're off that ladder. So I think that it's all part of the self-generating thing of any industry. It's incumbent on the veterans, if you like, me and you, to remember where we came from, to look after young journalists, young tennis players, and try and help them a bit.
And this is I think you asked me this, but eventually one day when I have kids, what do they want to be, a role model to? Like if you were to ask your kids, what would make you the most happy if they told you like what kind of person you were?
Do you know what? I remember seeing a clip on TikTok, and it was a guy in his like 80s, I think. And he said, let me tell you, he was a massively rich, successful business guy. And he said, let me tell you what the definition of success really is. If your kids get to adult life and they still want to hang out with you regularly, that's success.
Wow.
And if they don't, that's failure. My kids, thank God, they still love hanging out with me, coming on holiday with me. Admittedly, it's because I'm paying probably, but they love, we see each other.
You are cool though.
We meet for dinner all the time. We go to sporting events together as a group. We're very, very close as a family. I think, what is success for me? It's great being a high-profile journalist, great in doing interviews with people like you. It's all great. But actually, if I had a bad relationship with my kids, I would see my life as a failure.
Yep.
And I think any parent, that will resonate with them. And my advice to you, when this happens to you, is it's the most special relationship you're ever going to have is with your kids. And they're going to have a bit of you in them.
Yeah.
So it ain't going to be easy.
It's not going to be easy, but I'm going to keep that. I'm going to keep that in the back pocket. Thank you, Piers. Appreciate it.
Good to see you.
That was awesome.
Good fun.
Thank you. And guys, don't forget to like, subscribe, and watch all the episodes.